Breaking news. With Putin's enemies, Russia is crossing new lines in its crackdown. Years of repression in Russia might have seemed to have succeeded at first glance, with virtually all of the Kremlin's opponents already jailed or in exile and liberal media outlets and human rights groups forced to shut down. However, within the past 3 weeks, Russia's security services and courts have broken new ground in their crusade against enemies, spies, and traitors. The arrest of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich on March 29 should serve as a chilling warning to the remaining Western journalists in Russia about the dangers of traveling to and speaking with sources in Russia. The last time Moscow detained an American journalist for alleged espionage was in 1986, when the country was still under Soviet communist rule. Gershkovich, his paper, and the U.S. government all strongly reject the charge. Then on Monday, the 17th of April, Vladimir Kara-Murza, a politician from the opposition, was arrested and charged with treason and spreading false information about Russia's war in Ukraine. His 25-year sentence for protesting the Russian invasion was 3 times as long as the previous longest. The next day, supporters of Alexei Navalny, the most prominent critic of President Vladimir Putin, said he had been beaten by prison guards for the first time and faced new charges carrying 5 more years for thwarting prison authorities. Navalny is serving 11.5 a year for alleged fraud and contempt of court. The Kremlin has stated that it has no control over the judicial system and that Navalny's treatment is up to the corrections department. Putin has warned Russians that Western powers are using traitors in a fifth column to undermine the country's stability and eventually bring about its destruction. Since mid-March, Russia's parliament has also voted to increase the punishment for treason to life in prison instead of 20 years and expanded censorship laws on what people can say about its armed forces. While trying to escape to neighboring Belarus, the father of a Russian girl who drew an anti-war picture was arrested and given a 2-year prison sentence. This week, Ilya Yashin, another opposition politician, saw his appeal of an 8.5-year sentence for spreading false information about the armed forces be rejected. An actual totalitarian regime is on the rise. It was noticeable a year and a half ago, but now it's at full scale, said Nicholas Tenzer, senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis and a friend of Kara-Murza's. Since the International Criminal Court filed charges against Putin for war crimes on March 17, the trend has accelerated. Russia has rejected the arrest warrant as null and void because the country is not a member of the International Criminal Court, ICC. However, the arrest warrant served to highlight the fact that Putin has no recourse and, thus, nothing to lose in his relationship with the West. Putin appears to give a hoot about what the West thinks. He wants to go all out in his repression and his war, Tenzer said in a phone interview. The treatment of Navalny and Kara-Murza has been described as pure sadism by Maria Alyokina, a member of the feminist punk group Pussy Riot who spent nearly 2 years in a Russian penal colony for protesting against the Kremlin. There is a war going on, and they are losing it. That has enraged them, by the way. Because of feelings of helplessness, fear, and rage, they have resorted to violent action. She told Reuters, "I don't think in that sense they will stop. You may believe it cannot get any worse, but it does. Because of their poor health, which they attribute to poisoning attempts by the security services but which the Kremlin denies, supporters of Navalny and Kara-Murza worry that they will not be able to make it through their lengthy prison sentences." Last week, Navalny's supporters claimed he had lost weight quickly and experienced severe stomach pain, leading them to suspect another attempt at slow poisoning. Maria Pevchik, one of Navalny's associates, claims that he is being murdered behind bars. There was no response from the Russian prison system when asked for comment. Tenzer predicted that the deaths of Kara-Murza and Navalny would spark outrage, but Putin might reason that the West has already done all it can in response by imposing waves of sanctions on Moscow and arming its enemy, Ukraine. The Kremlin could benefit in the short term from how it deals with Gershkovich and the imprisoned Russians. While the trials of Navalny and Kara-Murza serve to neutralize Putin's best-known enemies and deter others from speaking out, Recent events suggest that the American may be traded in a prisoner exchange once his case has gone through the courts. However, there may be long-term consequences for the opposition in the form of powerful symbols or even martyrs. Putin's position is secure for the time being, but there are many examples of political prisoners who have gone on to become president, ranging from Václav Havel and Nelson Mandela to Michelle Bachelet of Chile. The death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini while in the custody of Iran's morality police in September sparked widespread protests across the country. After her husband's sentencing on Monday, Yevgenia Kara-Murza said, "Every dictatorial regime believes itself to be invincible, and yet every dictatorial regime falls in the end."